At the time of publishing this video, Australia is heading for a referendum. It's been over 20 years since our last referendum, but what is a referendum? What are they for? How do they work? And how do you vote in one? In this video, we will be looking at these questions and more. Australia is a constitutional monarchy, meaning that we have a monarch, but we have a constitution. The constitution is a set of laws that operates as a framework for how Australia as a nation is run. It's what gives different levels of parliament, executive government and the courts their power, as well as gives certain rules for how finance and trade need to occur, how the states need to operate, how new states may be added, a series of miscellaneous things, and how the constitution can be changed. All other laws within Australia need to fall in line with those set about by the constitution, and changing the constitution needs to be passed by the public directly. Generally, a law is passed by Parliament, by the members of Parliament who are elected by people to represent them. Parliament acts on behalf of the people, but for a constitutional adjustment to be made, Parliament cannot pass the law by itself. The public must directly vote to change it. A referendum is when we vote to make an adjustment to the Constitution. And we've had quite a few referenda in history. Referenda is just the plural form of referendum. The Australian Constitution came into effect on January 1st, 1900, when Australia became a federation, a nation. And as time goes on, there are bound to be changes that need to be made to this document. Since it was written, there have been 44 referenda in Australia. Due to the running of a referendum being fairly expensive and time-consuming, it's pretty common for multiple adjustments to be voted on at one time. And sometimes will even take place at the same time as federal elections, just as out of convenience. However, of the 44 referenda so far, there have only been 8 constitutional adjustments that have been made. It's generally difficult to get a nation to approve a change. But how does a referendum work? For a suggested change to our constitution to be put to a referendum for people to vote on, it first must receive a majority of votes from both the House of Representatives and the Senate in federal parliament. In special circumstances, it can be approved by one and the Governor-General. Once it's been approved by Parliament, the Governor-General then must give the bill the royal assent on behalf of the monarch. Referenda are run by the Australian Electoral Commission, the same independent body who are responsible for overseeing our federal elections. All eligible voters must vote in a referendum, the same as in elections in Australia. So that's all Australians over the age of 18 who aren't serving a prison sentence of 3 or more years. The referendum occurs on one day, and it's always a Saturday, though you can vote early and by post. The ballot papers look a little different than our election ballot papers do. In an election, we have preferential voting, where we number the candidates in order of our preference. In a referendum, there is only one box in which you must either write yes or no. Anything else will mean that that vote is not counted. Once the polls close, the count begins. Counting will mostly be done on the night, but can't be completed until all the postal and absentee votes are accounted for. But what needs to happen for a proposed adjustment to be passed and made to our constitution? Well, we need what's called a double majority. The first majority is that more than 50% of all Australians across the country need to approve the change. The second majority is that the majority of the states need to approve the change. This mechanism was added to give smaller states veto power, and was one of the key features of our constitution that was negotiated to get smaller colonies such as Western Australia to join federation, so Australia could become a nation in the first place. For a state to vote yes, more than 50% in the state need to approve the change. This means that if the majority of the population give the yes vote, but the majority of the states don't, then the law is not passed. And this is possible, as the states aren't all the same size. As an example, Victoria and New South Wales collectively have over half of Australia's population, so it would be possible to get a majority yes vote if a change is very popular in these two states, but not get the law passed if it was very unpopular in the other states. People living in territories, the Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory, only get counted towards the first majority, as territories don't get counted in the state's majorities. If a change directly affects a particular state, such as the redrawing of borders, that also must be approved by the state that it affects. So, for an adjustment to the Australian Constitution to take place, it first must get passed through both Houses of Parliament, then approved by the Governor-General on behalf of the monarch, then voted on in a referendum where it must receive both a yes vote from the majority of Australians and the majority of the states. It's quite a process, it's expensive to run, but this is how democracy in Australia works. I haven't talked about the adjustment proposed in the 2023 referendum in this video, which is to give Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament through a permanent advisory body to make representations to the Australian Parliament and Executive Government on legislation and policy of significance to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I don't think that this video on the mechanics of a referendum is the video to discuss the issues at play here, but I have linked some websites in the resource notes of this video. You can find the link to that in the description below. And that's all for now. If you are interested in learning more about how government in Australia works, you can check out my videos on the subject. I made videos about Australian elections, Victorian elections, and how government works in Australia. I also encourage you to check out my other videos if you consider yourself to be a curious person, because that's what I do here. I love exploring topics and ideas and inspiring me a sense of curiosity and wonder. Thanks for watching, take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.